situation with the COVID is very sad. And I think I told you last week that the thing that's the most frightening to me is, the idea that you could get sick with COVID or something else, and maybe the hospitals are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And that's a little frightening. So I hope everybody is staying safe and having sad, isolated Thanksgivings. And, we ordered in September a 22-pound turkey. I don't know what we're going to do. That's coming on Tuesday. I don't know what we're going to do with all that turkey. My mother's going to have to figure it out, but we can't go to their house because they're really elderly and my dad's very frail. So, I don't know what we're going to do, but not do it in person. The courts, the county has stayed in phase 0. So no in-person proceedings except for absolute emergencies. The city's either in phase 0 or 1, but it pretty much amounts to the same thing. We still have the same exceptions in the city of, the non-rent cases that we can execute on. And we've had to learn to be very careful about getting our judgments in those cases so that the sheriff believes that it complies with the exceptions. Judge Burleson extended his stay on that until the end of the year. And I think for all intents and purposes, with the holidays and everything, it's already been November, it's almost late November. We're pretty much sitting until the end of the year before we can execute on anything.
Mm-hmm.
We are having, I would say, somewhat more success with, we're still getting consent judgments when we file suit. Christine and Chris are doing mediations and trials and getting pay plans. I wouldn't say that the money is flying out, for the rent relief, but there have been a few successes. And again, we stand ready to help you with that, or to help you with looking at the release paperwork that they want you to sign or whatever, if you need help with that. I think these agencies and governments know they have until the end of the year to spend that money. So I hope they're getting on it. We're all going to watch this afternoon, I think on CaseNet, we're going to watch the TRO in the restaurant case. I'm not really sure I have a side in that, but I'm very interested in hearing the arguments. That's going to be at 3:00 in Division 38 in St. Louis County. I'm sure you've read about that case in the news where they're trying to sue to remain open. I just had a call from a client today who told me that Warren County's on Zoom now, which the squirrels in the cages out there must be running really fast for them to be doing Zoom. But I mean, we're relieved, they wanted us to do a case out there, and I'm not sure that we'd want to go out there right now, particularly since we're hearing that the outlying areas are getting, getting really hit hard with the virus right now, and that kind of thing. Part of my hearing yesterday that was funny was, when we used to go to the courthouse, and I can't tell you how much I miss the courthouse. A year ago, I would have never said, oh yeah, I'm going to miss the courthouse. But now I'm really wishing I was there. But, one thing about the courthouse is, anybody can come in. You have to go through security, but people can come in for the most part, except for like juvenile hearings or that kind of thing. Everything's open. And so you always had a couple of weird dudes, hanging around the division or hanging in the hall that didn't necessarily go with your court, or any cases, but they could be there if they wanted to. And some of them we sort of got to know, like the homeless guy who's always in the bus shelter on the corner. And some of them were seemed a little scary, and so we'd tell the bailiff kind of secretly, you got a weirdo over here and he doesn't belong to any of the attorneys. So yesterday on my big long testimony motion hearing, we got a weird dude who just dialed in and showed up, and he wouldn't tell the judge who he was, and his name was not familiar to any of us. None of the attorneys had called him to be a witness. And I was kind of like, oh, we got our weird dudes back again. We might not be in person, but we're still having virtual weirdos. So yeah, kind of made us sentimental. But yeah, I think not too much has changed in St. Charles and Jefferson, although I sort of would expect them to bounce back quicker because they have in the past. But if they're really getting hit with the virus, maybe not. I hope that again, wait, my chat went away. Let me click that back again. I just got new glasses too, so I can't see anything. when is St. Louis County closed for the holidays? Okay, they don't really close per se, but we quit having dockets. And so since we have a Thursday docket in St. Louis County, our last docket date for the year will be December 17th, because after that it's Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, and we wouldn't have it. Um, I doubt that there are any judges that have dockets the week of, that would be what, the 21st. I doubt there's any judges who are doing anything the last couple weeks of the year. Many of the judges rotate assignments, and so that's a time when they would be moving their courtrooms, if they're allowed to have any staff there to move them, and that kind of thing. We think we know the judge that's taking over our judge's docket. We think we're going to get Judge Medler, but I don't think we have dates for January yet, but we should have those soon. And so should the other divisions. If depending on what division you're in, Judge Lassiter and Judge Heggie are both going over to domestic, so they will have different judges substituting in. Um, Judge Baker is also going to domestic, and we already know that Judge Lay is taking his docket. I was just on a call with her on Wednesday. I would think that she will be giving out her dates really quickly. Judge Gossity already took Judge McNally's docket, so that division should have dates. Judge Cunningham is staying in civil, and Judge Hearn. So we're basically waiting on which judges are going to go to Lassiter and Heggie, and we think we know that. So we should have dates for that soon. Since the sheriff's not doing evictions right now, I'm not that worried about the fact that they won't do them on Christmas this year. But I am pretty sure. I had another call with the presiding judge and some other landlord tenant lawyers earlier this week in St. Louis County, and I think the presiding judge, I think Judge Burton, I mean, he's a very nice guy, and I think he's really starting to feel our pain. I mean, I think I made him feel really guilty when I told him that I hadn't taken a paycheck since March. Um, but which is not entirely true. It's actually since May. I just said it wrong when I told that to him. But he was trying to figure out ways when he can do this, and we're going to give him a proposal about appointing so-called special sheriffs, like a special process server, that many of us use to serve our papers, to see if we can get special officers appointed to serve the evictions. I'm not 100% sure he'll go for it, and I don't know if he'll do it while they're at phase 0 anyway. He recognizes that we got held back from going to phase 2, which was when he would start evictions, for several weeks because of the COVID cases in the jail.
Quiet, please.
Because of the COVID cases in the jail, but I think now they have judges that have COVID. They have clerks. They're down to phase either. They're on a skeleton staff. He's not going to let us do evictions now. I mean, I just don't think that's going to happen. I think we are going to have to just suck it up until the end of the year and, file your lawsuits, work your consent judgments, encourage your tenants to call 211 or go on the county website or the city website and, encourage them to apply for the resources. I had a tenant lawyer who told me a couple of weeks ago in one of these calls that the landlords weren't getting back to people. And I said, I don't really believe that, because the landlords are the ones who want the money. They benefit from this. You bet they're going to answer questions or provide a copy of the lease or whatever they need to do for these agencies. But that doesn't mean that the agencies aren't asking for unreasonable things or trying to make you make a deal that you really can't do, for giving a huge amount of the rent and that kind of thing. But I would encourage you to keep working it that way. Our writ is still at the Supreme Court. The next decision date they have is next Tuesday. We'd like it if they granted it, but on the other hand, I'd almost be rather they didn't consider it yet, to wait until the state and the COVID gets in slightly better position before we lose that. And we have, I think I've told you, we have considered a lot filing a federal lawsuit, and we're monitoring several federal lawsuits in different states, protesting various COVID regulations and protesting the CDC eviction stay, and they are not doing well. Landlords and other plaintiffs and restaurants and places like that are not winning these lawsuits. So we're Greg Anderson, my brilliant colleague, has been researching it. We're staying on top of these lawsuits. We're not convinced right now that it would be a good use of everybody's money and time to file one. Um, if the COVID rate was doing better, I'd feel better about it. Okay, what does this say? St. Louis Cares money. Um, Brian Chris with Urban League contacted me, emailed you a form, waiting to get. Patrice, I appreciate this update. Everybody should read this update from Patrice in the chat. She has been really great about keeping me updated on her journey, which has gone on for weeks and weeks, trying to get money, money through the Urban League for one tenant. I know there's been lost files and, all kinds of things. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for us here. Chris is on the phone doing mediations and payment plans and things all the time. I'd like to see more results from that. I have to hope that as we get closer to the end of the year, when these places, the governments are going to have to give the money back if they don't spend it, that maybe they'll go into a spending frenzy. But I think you're going to have to work it to get your case in line. So does anyone have any questions?
Kathy?
Yeah.
If we're waiting on the sheriff now, they talk about these CDC documents that could be given to us.
Yes.
Do we have to worry about that, or does that not apply to us if we're just waiting on the execution now with the sheriff?
It still applies. There's substantial penalties for violating that. So if you get one of those documents, you should have someone take a look at it to see whether you have to stay your eviction or not.
Okay, now do those apply to us if we own our buildings free and clear where there's no government, or is that only if it's a government-backed loan?
This applies to everybody.
Okay.
I think that's questionable legally, but that's the way the order's written. And like I said, the big case that I thought was going to do well in Georgia, they ruled against the landlords. The other cases so far, they're ruling against the landlords. There was one case, a non-landlord case in Pennsylvania, where the district court judge ruled against the COVID restrictions and ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, but that's going to be appealed. And my friends in Pennsylvania tell me it's likely not to do well on appeal. My brother's actually a lawyer in Pennsylvania.
Let's see. Going forward, is there any verbiage that we should have in our leases to try to protect us now that we're in a whole new era of unknown stuff now? Or is it just nothing we can do going forward?
There's always more stuff you can put in your lease, but I don't think that you can have, there's certain things tenants, you can't make them waive. They can't waive the right to file bankruptcy. They can't waive, aside from the legal problems that I think are there with the CDC stay, you can't make them waive their right to do that. So I don't know. Let's talk for a quick second about jury trials, because this is something that you can waive in your leases. It should be prominent and all caps and bold and maybe have them initial next to it. But right now, if someone asks for a jury trial, we're not going to get civil jury trials for a long time. The criminal jury trial cases are backed up. They have a constitutional right to a speedy trial, so they will get preference. There will be nothing we can do about that. There's technically a docket preference for unlawful detainer jury trials in the statute, but it's like soonest available. It's not the same as the criminal right to a speedy trial. So it could be 2022 before we're seeing civil jury trials. So if you don't have jury waivers in your leases now, I'd get those in.
Now,
Get those in.
if by chance a squatter comes into someone's building, can those be put out right away, or are we locked in on that?
Well, squatters, the police should put them out. It's hard to know what any police in any given jurisdiction will do. We have a lot of jurisdictions, and it might depend on the officer and what the squatter does. Chris had a case where squatters moved into a building, and it's a landlord who lives out of town and was not seeking to rent the buildings. They were just working on getting them rehabbed. And the squatter forged a lease. So when the police were called, the police decided they didn't want to get involved and told them to go to court on it. So we did. Okay, wait, I've got a couple more questions. Is it possible to waive the right to be evicted through the courts? No, I don't think that waiver would stand up. And Maria, you have a question for me. Do you want to ask it here or do you want to call
Yeah,
me?
yeah.
Okay.
So Kathy, my question, since a lot of the stuff that we can put on a lease is going to be limited, I'm wondering how much, how personal we can get and when we're vetting new tenants. So, for example, is it legal for me to ask a tenant what their plans are to pay rent in case their, COVID or anything else affects their ability to earn income?
I think you can qualify them on the basis of credit, and that's probably a qualification based on credit. What you want to be really careful with is to have the same procedure with every tenant, because you don't want to deliberately discriminate, and you don't want to inadvertently discriminate either, and have it work out that you've got some category of folks that somehow got asked more questions than another category of folks. And frankly, everybody who's an experienced landlord gets it. You don't really want to discriminate except on the basis of the ability to pay. If someone can pay, who cares, what race they are or gender or their marital status or whatever, you want them to be able to pay. I think it's good if you have a screening service that can run credit bureau reports and that kind of thing, if you can't do it in-house, and that you do those kinds of things across the board. And I also think that it's successful to charge a small application fee that will cover your costs of doing this same screening for everyone. And I'm
Right.
sure there's
So,
people on this call that have good screening services they could recommend.
right, but I'm talking about going beyond the screening service. I have access to several credit screening services and background services, so I'm not really concerned about that, and that wouldn't change my process. But actually having some sort of questionnaire that they would provide in writing what their plan was should their income stream be interrupted.
Well, I think you could say that. I mean, you might want to have a couple of questions on the application. How sure are you about the long-term security of your job? And, what's your backup plan? I mean, I think that, right now we have a situation where restaurant workers on Delmar, they can be 2 blocks apart and one has a job and one doesn't, right? So did any of those people really know what would happen? Probably not. You know, that I mean, you got to feel sorry for someone who maybe worked at Yellow Belly and decided to switch over and work at Pastaria. They just lost their job. I mean, I'm making that up. That's a hypothetical, but um, I think you could ask them that. Uh, I would.
To be honest, I'm a little bit more concerned about professional type tenants, like people with, good jobs that went to college and that sort of thing. Not so much the essential workers, but like office career type people.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, I think this is a scary environment for everyone right now. Um, I've got a lot of clients that have commercial buildings, and they're worried that now that everybody works at home, that going forward, what kind of market is there going to be for commercial space? We don't know. Um, I think that you can ask some questions like that as long as you ask it of everyone, but I'm not sure that anyone can even honestly give you a sincere answer.
Right, right. Okay, cool. Perfect. Thank you so much.
I mean, I know my job is secure, but I don't know about anybody else. The boss isn't
Hey.
going to fire me.
Don't look in the mirror.
Right. The boss might not pay me a lot, but I'll still be here.
Yeah. Early on, you said the police, you had to show them that it was a legitimate eviction to the police people. Did I hear that right?
Wait, I'm not sure. That doesn't sound like what I said. What were we talking about?
When I first got on board here, you said something about you have to make sure it's worded right so the police think it's a legit.
The sheriffs in the city. In the city, Judge Burleson, his eviction stay is more open than the one in the county. The county just no evictions. In the city, he has accepted certain categories of eviction, like unlawful detainers, things that are not for rent, things that are for behavior or lease termination or anything other than rent. So you have to make sure that when you take your judgment in the city, that it specifically states out the reasons for the eviction. It's not just for rent the amount of blah and possession of blah. You have to say, there was a termination of tenancy, that kind of thing in the judgment, so that when it gets processed through to the sheriff can see that that's an eligible eviction under the judge's order. Is that a better explanation?
Yes, because I sounded like they were overriding the judge's rule, and I thought, since when did that get to happen?
Not as often as I would like.
I hear you.
Yeah. What else have we got, guys? Anything? You know, I want everyone to have a lovely Thanksgiving next week. And you know, we're not going to do this call next Friday. I have told everybody in my office to take 4 whole days off and relax. There's a couple of workaholics who might not do that, but that's what we're trying for. And I've also told them that the refrigerator is getting cleaned out on Wednesday, so they're not going to have any food here to eat. So they might as well stay home and eat their turkey leftovers. So if that's all we got, wait a minute. I think maybe I have one more question. How does a stay work? It works different in different counties. A stay in general is some kind of order by the court that something won't happen, something won't be stayed. You know, if someone files bankruptcy, there's what they call the bankruptcy stay, which means you have to get permission from the bankruptcy court before you can take any collection actions. You can't ask them for their rent. You can't proceed with your lawsuit. You can't have the sheriff kick them out while there's a bankruptcy stay in effect. Right now, some of our counties have stays in effect with respect to court proceedings in general, but we generally here talk specifically about evictions. And the truth is that in all of our counties except Jefferson, we can file lawsuits now. We can get them on a docket. We can have a court date. We can get a trial setting and have a trial if we can't resolve it on the court date. And we can get a judgment. In some of the counties right now, there's a stay with respect to evictions. In Jefferson County, which is kind of the exception, they kind of bounce back and forth out of their various phase levels. And right now, they are not, the eviction judges on the eviction dockets are not willing to do Zoom dockets down there or WebEx or whatever. So that results when they go back down to phase 0 or 1 or whatever it is, we can't have court dates at all. So Chris has been good about working the system down there. And I think, you know, they were telling him they weren't giving him dates until February. And I think he got that backed up to, we've got some December dates, but they're the most, you know, fragile and difficult with respect to what their stay means. In all of the other counties so far, we can do remote hearings. So the stay that we have in effect, you know, in St. Louis County, for example, is there's no evictions at all until they go to phase 2 and they're in phase 0. In the city, there's no evictions for rent, but there's evictions for other categories of things. And I want to tell you, not to toot my own horn, but I'm the one who negotiated these exceptions. I feel great about that. I feel better about it when I first did it in August. And we sort of added a couple of categories every month, but I feel bad now that I haven't been able to get the judge to just lift it all together. But he is kind of following the language of the CDC order, and he is not going to reconsider this until the end of December. And I can tell you this judge really, I mean, I like all these judges. This judge really wants court to resume as normal. And it was really apparently a battle with him and the other judges to get jury trials stopped. He wanted to have jury trials now. I can tell you, I live in the city. I wouldn't have reported for jury duty if they summoned me, but he has since had to agree that there's not going to be any jury trials at all in the city until next year. And then they, again, I think will probably start with criminal jury trials. Now, there are some counties in the state where they've had live jury trials in person, counties that had very low incidence of COVID in the summer and, you know, that kind of thing. There was a jury trial in St. Charles where they picked the jury in the family arena so they could have a big pool, maybe 60 prospective jurors and keep them all apart. And then they tried the case once they got down to like their 12 jurors and their alternates, they tried it in a big courtroom in the county courthouse. So, you know, obviously this is unprecedented. I can tell you that different courts and different judges are trying really hard to still take care of people and do business, but in a way it's all over the place. And I think the question back before I started discoursing all of this was, what is a stay? A stay is when a court says this isn't going to happen for a while. I'm going to give a stay of execution. I'm going to, you know, not issue court dates or, you know, whatever. And, you know, we've taken a writ. There's federal lawsuits. We've tried to get around some of this stuff and it's not going real great. If the COVID rate would go down, I think we'd have more success. I think we're clearly legally right on some of our issues, but there's also a position that a government can say in the event of a great potential harm like the disease that they can issue these orders. Wait, do I have more stuff here? Placing a new tenant. It's not possible to waive the right to evict through the court. Did I already answer that? Is there an unlimited amount of time for a stay? I don't think so, but I mean, imagine a world where there was no vaccine coming and we didn't know when this COVID was going to end. I mean, we either have to all be totally on some government assistance or, there'd be a total breakdown. I mean, sooner or later, they'd have to let us go about our business. So sooner or later, if they don't lift these stays, someone's going to win one of these lawsuits. Like I said earlier, I'm going to be watching the restaurant one this afternoon to see how they do. I don't think they have great timing on this. I don't think they're going to win, but I'm interested to see the arguments and see how they do with that. So, anybody else?
Is that something we can watch this afternoon, Kathy?
Yes. You need to go on the St. Louis County website and find out the Zoom ID for Judge Lassiter. And I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head, but it should be easy to find. And it's at 3:00. And the judge might ask you, if you go onto the hearing while you're there and say you wanted to see the hearing. I would suspect there'll be some interest in it. On the other hand, you might be the weird dude in the Zoom room, watching the hearing.
I'm always the weird guy in the Zoom.
Yeah, there you go. You fit right in.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I'd be very curious just to see that.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot about it, and that's gonna probably set a lot of standards for a lot of what's going on right now, I would think.
I feel like, I could watch Zoom hearings all day long and I got to do some real work at some point, but this one's not until 3 this afternoon. So I think I'll have my other urgent stuff done by then and I can take a peek at it and see how it goes.
All right,
Is
thank
that
you.
city or county?
It's the county. It's St. Louis County, Division 38, Judge Lassiter. And the case is under Missouri Restaurant Association versus St. Louis County.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
If I have anything earth shaking in the next 2 weeks, I'll email it to John so he can post it on your webpage. And if not, I'll see everybody in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Kathy. And
Okay.
the best of the
Thanks, Kathy.
holiday season for Thanksgiving to you, even if you don't get all that turkey.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. Thank you too, guys.